It's heartbreaking and beyond frustrating that women's health and safety continue to be put in jeopardy because of a deep-rooted, pernicious, patriarchal strategy to dominate and control our bodies and our lives. We saw it last year with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, with the continuation of red state abortion bans and restrictions across the country, and now through a conservative judge's attempt to ban a long-used and safe abortion pill, one that is also prescribed to women who have miscarried. As a mother and the first partner of California, it's beyond frustrating to watch this concerted attack on every vulnerable community in our country in order to preserve power and control in the hands of a privileged conservative few. We've seen it through the elimination of critical race theory and book bans, efforts to ignore our nation's imperfect and troubled history, censor marginalized voices, and erase literature on people of color and the LGBTQ+ community. We've seen it through laws that make it easier for racists and misogynists to purchase guns while innocent children are shot and murdered at birthday parties, in schools, and in their neighborhoods, leaving families and communities to grieve and wonder when this country's leaders will use the same fervor to protect them as they do to claim they are pro-life. Pro-life? Such hypocrisy. But as I said last year in this very room when SCOTUS overturned Roe v. Wade, if California has to lead and be defiant in the face of racism, sexism, and misogyny, we will, and we have. I'm so honored to call California home, so proud to raise our children here, and I'm beyond grateful to live in a state where equity is our North Star, and where our governor, the entire administration, and our legislature are deeply committed to protecting and expanding not just reproductive rights, but women's rights as a whole. It's no surprise Californians voted to enshrine reproductive freedom into our state constitution, because in California, we trust women. In California, we value women, and we support their right to determine their own destiny. That's freedom. And that's what this nation should be all about. I'm happy to introduce an incredible defender of women's rights, California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rob Bonta, California Attorney General. And let me just first start off by saying I wish we weren't forced to gather here again, but I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else, with this governor, with this first partner, with this pro tem, this speaker, these legislative leaders, these advocate leaders. When it comes to California, standing together, locking arms, and fighting for our values, our people, access to health care, our rights, our freedoms, this is the team that's fighting harder than anyone else. So I'm proud to be here to fight once again, and we're going to do our part at the California Department of Justice. When it comes to reproductive freedom, the Department of Justice is committed to protecting your privacy, to ensuring your access, to safeguarding your security. In short, California, we've got your back in clinics, in courtrooms, and on the ground across the state. But it's not enough that we get it done here in California. We're also fighting for these fundamental rights across the nation, and we're not backing down, and we're here to reaffirm that fight, that commitment. For decades, mifepristone has been a safe and reliable lifeline for so many. Safer than Tylenol, safer than a colonoscopy, safer than having your wisdom tooth removed, safer than Viagra. It's safe. It's been safe. That has not changed. It's been safe for over 20 years. And the decision to claw back its approval is unconscionable and unprecedented. As California's chief law enforcement officer, let me be clear. Mifepristone and all abortion services are still legal and fully protected in California. Whether you're seeking or providing an abortion, you are safe here. Over the last year and a half, we've experienced some of the lowest lows and the darkest days. I fear that they may not all be behind us, but we continue to do what we've always done, to meet the moment, to rise to the occasion, to fight back, and to push back. Through it all, our stance has been unwavering. We are and will continue to be a safe haven for reproductive freedom. You can count on California. The governor will make sure of it. The California Women's Caucus, led by Senator Skinner and Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry, will make sure of it. Pro Tem Atkins and Speaker Rendon will make sure of it. Together, we'll make sure of it. I and my entire team at the DOJ will help make sure of it as well. From Proposition 1 to 2 years of expansive legislation, increasing protections, to the fervent enforcement of our reproductive health care laws and ongoing leadership in court to preserve access, California has made it clear the more that anti-abortion states try to roll back reproductive freedoms, the harder we will fight to defend them. Today is just another example of that commitment. The leaders you see up here, they give me hope. They inspire me, as do our partners in the White House. Despite the fact that they've been thrown one challenge after another, the Biden-Harris administration has been tireless in their defense of our reproductive freedoms. I'm proud to work with them and grateful for their collaboration and their partnership. We'll continue to fight, and we are up for the challenge. With that, let me please have the opportunity to introduce Assemblymember Cecilia Aguiar-Curry.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Cecilia Aguiar-Curry. I represent the 4th District, and it's an honor to be here today, and as representing as the Vice Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus. Last year, the Legislative Women's Caucus rose to the occasion, and with the support of the Future of Abortion Council, our colleagues, and Governor Newsom, we moved forward legislation to expand, protect, and strengthen access to reproductive health care, including abortions for all Californians and people seeking such care in our state. And this year is no different. We are not standing down until a woman's reproductive health and abortion rights stop being attacked. Some judicial appointees and states want to send us back to the Middle Ages on people's reproductive health and abortion rights. They're proven this is not a fight we can win by focusing solely within the California borders. Here in California, we made a long-standing promise to be the refuge state for anyone seeking to exercise their rights, and we intend to keep it. Thank you to all of our colleagues and all of you who are here today. With that, I'd like to introduce Senator Nancy Skinner, the chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus.
Thank you so much. I'm Senator Nancy Skinner, Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, and as my colleague, the Vice Chair of the caucus, Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry, pointed out, the wisdom of the Future of Abortion Council, which is an incredible coalition of organizations across the state that fight for women's reproductive rights, for the reproductive rights of everyone, and also provide services, fight for those rights. It includes organizations like Black Women for Wellness, Latinas for Reproductive Justice, NARAL, Planned Parenthood, so many more. And I didn't want to believe that the Supreme Court would overturn Roe, but they saw it coming, and so they approached us, and they brought us an incredible package of bills last year, which we got passed, and Governor Newsom signed into law. And with the leadership of our Senate Pro Tem, Senator Tony Atkins from San Diego, we also put before the voters the constitutional protection to guarantee abortion services, the right to an abortion, and contraception in California, in our Constitution, and our voters overwhelmingly approved it. But now, look, we continue to see this assault. The anti-abortion zealots in this country are, they seem to have no bounds. And we are going to leave no stone unturned. Not only are they assaulting our right to a bodily autonomy, but also gender-affirming care. That seems to be their latest obsession. And we are finding that they are making illegal in a variety of states the ability for a person to pursue gender-affirming care, another healthcare decision that should be between your healthcare provider and the individual. So we are taking it all on. We have another package of bills that we are working with the FAB Council on. It's 17 bills, and those bills will further expand our protections and recognize that our healthcare practitioners provide healthcare to people all over the country. You and I could be in another state at any point, and our healthcare provider deserves to be protected for providing us healthcare that is legal in California, and from being protected against any other state's aggressive prosecution of their laws, which don't make any scientific or healthcare sense. So, like I said, we will leave no stone unturned, and I appreciate being here. I appreciate the governor's leadership. I appreciate all of my colleagues and the FAB Council and our two heads of our houses, the Speaker Rendon and Senator Atkins, for her good work on that constitutional amendment. And with that, I would like to introduce Speaker Anthony Rendon.
Thank you, Senator Skinner. I appreciate the opportunity to be here among California's defenders of a woman's right to abortion. The governor, the first partner, the Senate Pro Tem, Planned Parenthood, and our Legislative Women's Caucus have all been on the forefront of this struggle. It's a struggle we thought we had settled half a century ago. Unfortunately, the court thinks otherwise. Abortion needs to be safe and available because we will always need that choice. That is what mifepristone is designed for. That is what study after study has shown, that it is safe. Nevertheless, the extreme right is doing what it has done on other issues. If it has no logical argument to stand on, it attacks the process. This raid on our judiciary is as misguided as the January 6th raid on the U.S. Capitol. We cannot stand by, and in California, we will not stand by. I thank the governor for his actions. I thank the organizations behind us. I thank the Senate and my assembly colleagues. We are all united on this. Thank you. It's now my honor to introduce my legislative partner, Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And like Jennifer Siebold Newsom, I am proud. I am so proud to be here in California. And I'll be a bit repetitive. I am not taking anything for granted. We have, and I want to acknowledge some incredible leadership here today. Our governor, the first partner, our attorney general, my legislative partner, Speaker Rendon, the Legislative Women's Caucus led by Senator Nancy Skinner and Assemblymember Cecile Aguiar-Curry, the caucus as a whole, and our partners, our incredible partners in the California Future of Abortion Council, including those representing that council today, Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California and NARAL Pro-Choice California. As a Democratic leader of the Senate, I am proud. California does not sit back. We take action. We took action on Proposition 1 to enshrine abortion and contraception into our state constitution. We passed more than a dozen pieces of legislation last year to expand and protect abortion and reproductive care, and they were signed into law last year by our governor for access, legal protections, training of providers, expanding the pool of providers, financial support, and coverage by healthcare insurers. We allocated more than $200 million to funding to support all of that legislation and bolster security of our clinics and to help pay for services.
Somebody, please. The doctor.
She is the doctor. I think the Gatorade might help.
Yeah.
The sugar.
Thank you so much.
We take action. No, really. We appreciate the assist, as always, from the media. It's important that we're here for each other, just as you saw we were here for Dr. Weber, our Assembly colleague. And we're all going to want to make sure that she is well and okay. It's why we allocate money, like $200 million, to fund and support our legislation that supports health care, bolsters the security of our clinics, and help pay for services for those who may need to come here. We even had the best, most user-friendly website up and running in record time to help people understand that their rights remain protected here and help connect them with services and providers. This year, we have more than 17 more pieces of legislation to tackle every aspect of our challenge. When it became clear that the Texas ruling regarding the FDA approval of mifepristone was possible, California began preparing to secure an emergency stockpile of misoprostol. Once again, California is ready. When I was the director of a clinic service organization, Women's Health Care Clinic, I talked with abortion providers who recalled times pre-Roe, the secretive trainings to make sure that practitioners knew how to perform procedures safely, and an underground network of practitioners who helped women in need. It is staggering, as my speaker colleague mentioned, that here we are 50 years later, and yet once again, we're back to ensuring that practitioners get the training that they need so that we have enough providers. It's staggering to think that we're securing doses of an abortion medication that's been proven safe and effective because the other piece of the two-drug regimen is under threat. RU-486, the original name for mifepristone back in the 80s, which was first developed by a German company and embraced by French researchers. It was a game changer for women. I was a clinic director in 1987. It took us until 2000 to have access to that drug in this country, after more than 20,000 women went under studies to prove that it was safe. The World Health Organization has it on the list of essential medications worldwide. After it was approved for use in France in 1988, the French Minister of Health called it the moral property of women. So too are our reproductive rights. And today, here in California, we're saying loud and clear, we will not go backwards. You can get the critical reproductive and abortion care you need here in California. And now I'd like to introduce one of our key partners, Shannon Hovis, the director of NARAL Pro-Choice California, to say a few words. Shannon.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shannon Olivieri Hovis, and I'm the director of NARAL Pro-Choice California, proudly representing NARAL's 4 million members nationally who are fighting for reproductive freedom all across this country. I want to be abundantly clear about what these latest attacks on reproductive freedom are about. Anti-choice extremists know that they cannot win in the court of public opinion. They know that 8 in 10 Americans support the legal right to abortion. And they know that they cannot pass a nationwide abortion ban. They don't have the votes, and they wouldn't, because the political backlash would be overwhelming. So they've turned to our rigged courts. Judge shopping to an anti-choice, Trump-appointed judge in the state of Texas with the specific attempt to create this backdoor nationwide abortion ban with the intention of putting medication abortion out of reach in all states, all across this country, especially states like California, which have very strong protections for the right to abortion access. This extreme ruling puts every single FDA-approved medication at risk of being rescinded. So this should be alarming to all of us for all of its implications. But I want to reassure you that thanks to the leadership of our incredible governor, our attorney general, our state legislative leaders, We will do everything in our power to protect access to medication abortion here, undisrupted access to medication abortion in the state of California, regardless of the outcome in this case. Abortion care will remain accessible in California, and that's for anyone, regardless of where they call home. I'm 36 weeks pregnant. For those who don't speak in weeks, it's about 8 months. And this entire pregnancy, I have acutely felt the terror that I would feel if I lived in a state that has enacted a ban on abortion, for fear that if something went wrong in this pregnancy, I would be unable to get the essential health care I needed to save my life and to ensure that my 1.5-year-old daughter has a mother to come home to. These are the stakes that we are living with at the moment. California will not be bullied, and we will not back down. And with that, it is my honor to introduce a very close partner and friend, Jody Hicks, the president of Planned Parenthood.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. And I have to tell you, we've been working on this in the FAB Council, and I know I haven't felt it as acutely as Shannon, but it's certainly for all of us as a group as we watch in real time her pregnancy and feel what this means. And time and again, I have stood here since that Dobbs decision and talked about everything we've done in California and talked about the stories that I hear from my colleagues of people in other states that can't get the care that they need, that are traveling here to California, that we're doing everything we can to protect everyone that needs care here in California, no matter where they call home, but also people that need to come. We took extraordinary steps to even ensure that we could help with their travel and their child care and everything that we can do, because as Californians, that's what we do, is we look around the nation and we do everything we can. But I have to tell you that today does feel different, and this week has been different. We are here because anti-abortion extremists are going to great lengths to reach into states like California to ban, to restrict, and criminalize abortion. And I want to be clear that no matter what the court's ruling may bring tomorrow or in the next few days, abortion will remain available in California. Planned Parenthood affiliates are committed to continue to provide abortions across the state. But I also want to be clear that anti-abortion extremists and politicians are not stopping with overturning Roe v. Wade and allowing states to ban abortion. They are actively working to dismantle sexual and reproductive health care nationwide. They are attacking medication abortion, which is over half the abortions that are provided across the country. Over half are medication abortions, and that's exactly what they're attacking with this one judge in one county in Texas. It's a medication that has been approved. It's been used by over 5 million people for more than 2 decades, for 23 years. I have some brilliant staff, and this drug has more experience than how long they've been alive for some of my amazing staff. And that's what they're attempting to overturn in this one decision by one judge. They're finding any way to attack access and rights, reaching into California despite the tremendous work, despite everything that you've heard here today, and making it harder for providers and patients to receive access. But in California, we continue to reimagine how to build something better and bolder. And we're continuing to look at all options, both what we need to do in the short term and thoughtfully and intentionally what we need to do in the long term. But the reality is we are not immune. We're not immune here from the impacts of the unrelenting campaign to ban abortion nationwide.
And in the last few weeks, we have seen how one judge in Texas is imposing his personal beliefs, his anti-abortion agenda, across the entire nation, overriding the FDA and the medical community, and attempting to ban what is a life-saving drug. And let's be clear what this attack on medication abortion means. It's the ability to not only create new barriers for those who already face hardships, but it's also attacking access to everyone. So no matter your insurance coverage, no matter your income, no matter your zip code, they're attempting to attack your access to abortion. But this doesn't also affect abortion. We are talking about a drug that doctors use for pregnancy care, for if you have complications, to ease a burden, or it's life-saving in many instances. And this one judge in Texas is deciding what is best for patients rather than what's scientific, rather than doctors, and certainly rather than FDA authority that we have put in place for safety. California does more medication abortions per month than the total abortions done in many other states. So to say the impacts on the attack on medication abortion would be real here is truly, truly an understatement. And much of the harm from these attacks comes in the form of chaos and confusion and created through decisions like this. Replacing scientific and medical evidence and protocols with ideological beliefs from zealots makes it incredibly challenging for providers. And quite frankly, that chaos is the cruelty that they're intending to impose. But despite all this, Planned Parenthood affiliates, providers, and staff continue day in and day out, and I want to thank them and all the work they're doing in health centers, not just Planned Parenthood, independent health centers across California and across the country, for continuing to do this work and constantly showing up in a shifting landscape every day. I want to thank the governor again, as well as the legislators and the attorney general. I have to tell you, I didn't know how good it was to have this community behind me and remind all the work that we've done in what's been a really challenging week. So thank you, and they continue to provide reassurance to patients and providers. It's the course of action is what, and we heard, the vast majority of our public wants us to do. It's exactly why we'll continue to do it. We'll stand up and speak out and continue to take action. And it's certainly what our governor has continued to do. He's been really a leader across the country. I have my colleagues calling me all of the time to get insight into what we're doing in California so they can replicate that in other states. And all of that work matters. It matters more than ever, and it certainly gives comfort and hope to have him at the forefront of fighting these attacks. So with that, I'm honored to welcome Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your comments, for your leadership, for your faith and devotion that we all share for women and girls and their reproductive freedoms, their fundamental rights. Look, I don't want to belabor what was expressed. I think everything was covered. I think the purpose, the why we're here is self-evident. Everything and anything is possible tomorrow at the U.S. Supreme Court. And we want folks to know that we're here and we remain steadfast in our determination to respond appropriately and accordingly and to maintain our vigilance as it relates to efforts to do more and express a broader and deeper level of support for people that are deeply anxious and fearful about the moment they're living in. I have said this on many occasions, and I'll repeat it, because over the course roughly of my lifetime, I've seen a rights revolution take place, and I frankly took it for granted. On voting rights, on civil rights, LGBTQ rights, on reproductive freedom, reproductive rights, on contraceptive rights. All of that has now experienced a wrecking ball in real time. This rights regression, no longer a rights revolution. Last half century, 50 years, just in the last 5 years or so, we have seen this great divergence in red states and blue states. But that's not what today is about. That divergence has been primarily in red states and blue states. But what this judge has done has brought this fight to blue states, not just red states. The expansion of rights on a national basis is the regression now of rights on a national basis. That's what they've long intended to do. 231, that's a number you should remember. It's the number of federal judges the Trump administration appointed to the bench. 54, number of appellate federal judges he appointed to the bench, and 3, you know those 3, on the U.S. Supreme Court. They have very intentionally set the course of events that we're now experiencing in action. It shouldn't surprise anyone. You had a judge that was well known, devout in his opposition across the spectrum of rights, that was picked for this district in northern Texas, in Amarillo, and they have done exactly as was expressed. They've judge shopped with a predetermined outcome. That's why you were surprised on the first day of the hearing that there wasn't a decision, because you already knew there was a decision. So we just waited for the pageantry of process to unfold to advance exactly what we knew was predetermined. It was also predetermined, was it not, at the Fifth Circuit, the same Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that just recently announced that regardless of your felony record relating to, as an example, domestic violence, that you have a fundamental right to a long gun, a fundamental right to a weapon of war, regardless of your domestic violence history and past. This is the same Fifth Circuit that advanced the bounties for women fleeing the condemnation of sorts of their fundamental freedoms as it relates to SB 8. Don't forget the appellate jurisdiction this federal judge is in as well, going now to the Supreme Court. So we're here, hours away from the determination of whether this stay is extended or there's a determination, adjudication for the courts. None of us holding our breath because we simply no longer can count on the Supreme Court. What you can count on, though, is everybody behind me. This is not insignificant, and I think you know that, particularly those of you who follow us, to have the Attorney General of the state of California here with the Speaker and the Pro Tem and the leaders of Women Caucus, which happen to be the leaders in the Assembly and the Senate, the moral center of so much of the work we do in the state of California, where our values so often reside in terms of their action, not just their passion. That action, as the Pro Tem expressed, was advanced in 14 specific bills we signed last year, the $200+ million of additional support that we provided in anticipation of the uncertainty in the moment and the moments that we're now working through. 17+ now bills that are pending determination through both houses. They'll be amended. Some will make them my desk, some will not. There are a few that are fundamental and critical, however, around the issues of privacy, which is foundational as it relates to electronic health records, that we need to advance here in the state of California. There are others as it relates to protecting those that distribute, those that transport, those that hold supplies of these drugs, to make sure they're indemnified in terms of their licenses being potentially at threat of revocation and or any legal actions. Pharmacists, as an example, pharmacies, as example, that we need to advance. Many other ideas worthy as well of consideration. So our work is never done. I want to close by saying that work now has extended well beyond this state. We are now working in collaborative spirit and a partnership, the likes of which we've never worked, now with 22 states as part of a reproductive alliance representing the majority of the American people. These 22 governors are working with toolkits, comparing and contrasting, working with their chiefs of staff that meet on a consistent basis. We actually have staff full-time working to advance the needs and aspirations of this alliance, to make sure we're sharing in real time best practices, because we want folks to know they're not alone. One of those best practices was abortion.ca.gov. And I highlight abortion.ca.gov because if you have a question, that's the repository of answers. Abortion.ca.gov. Whatever happens in real time, we'll update that site. Whatever happens, and forgive me, I use the lazy term of Miffy versus Miso. You've got Miffy Prostan or Preston, whatever, and then Prex, and then you've got Danco, that's the branded version versus the generic version. Miffy's easier for someone like me, and miso. We have ample supplies of both now. We went out to get more of the miso, and we have ample supply. We've been constant, when I say constant, yesterday included, with Danco on the supply of Miffy, Prex, or however you want to describe drug currently in this state. So that's the state of our readiness and preparedness. But again, none of us are in denial about this moment we're living in. It's an extraordinary time. And let us not, let me just reinforce what my wife and others said. This simply would not be happening to men and boys. This is an assault on women and girls and their fundamental rights and freedoms, period, full stop. And that's a hell of a statement that we're living in 2023 in the United States of America, and we're seeing this full frontal assault on women and girls and their fundamental rights and freedoms. And that's why we need to call this out and be clear in our conviction and our resolve. And that's why I could not be again, in closing as I began, more proud of the people that are standing side by side with all of us, and all women and girls, and those that will be impacted across the spectrum by these terrible decisions that are being made without any consultation or consideration of consequence. With that, we're all here to answer any questions.
Governor, if the court were to withdraw the FDA approval for this medication, would you defy that order? Could you defy that order?
I believe in the rule of law. The other side often doesn't.
Morgan Reiner with ABC 10 and CBS 8. You said one of the critical bills would protect doctors from sending that medication. There is exactly that bill to do that, but if the Supreme Court does uphold the Fifth Circuit of Appeals, that would no longer be allowed. So I'm wondering where the legality of that bill would stand.
Well, state law. We can't impact federal law, but under state law, we can certainly provide those protections. I'm very mindful of, we all had to look up Comstock, which is a remarkable thing, that they're going back into the annals of that history. And that can impact miso, not just Miffy. That can impact cross-section of other drugs. I mean, this is a very serious and searing moment in our lives. And so, look, it goes to the first question and an amplification of the second. We are creative. If nothing else, we are creative. You may have heard Jody. You didn't hear it, but she was speaking in between the lines a little bit there about some of the ideas we've been coming up with. Don't think for a second we don't have more ideas. And please don't think for a second I'm going to say anything more about it. But we are a creative bunch, and we tend to lead, and we have certainly led the national abortion rights movement, and we intend to continue.
One area the state hasn't led is on this lawsuit out of Washington to protect mifepristone access. 18 states are on that lawsuit.
I'll ask my Attorney General.
Was there a reason why California didn't join that lawsuit? Was it a mistake, or was it an intentional decision not to join that lawsuit?
In short, it was intentional, it was deliberate, it was strategic. And let me first say this, make no mistake about California's role in defending reproductive freedom nationwide. We have led, we are leading, we will continue to lead. We led on the Dobbs case, we led on the amicus brief. We have gone to circuits all throughout the nation, taking on challenges to the right to reproductive freedom. And we have always thought that when it comes to mifepristone, the best pathway to defend FDA's approval is direct involvement in the case coming out of the Northern District of Texas. We were involved at the district court level and the Northern District of Texas, the circuit court level, the Supreme Court level, with amicus briefs with multiple states. We believe that the most likely final ruling on the legality of the FDA's approval of mifepristone will come from the U.S. Supreme Court, and it will apply uniformly nationwide. It won't be on a state-by-state basis. So having said that, we work with our state allies and colleagues throughout the nation. We are conquering by dividing. Dividing and conquering with involvement in different cases. There's a number of states, of course, that are involved in the Washington lawsuit. There are a number of states, notable ones like California, like New York, like Massachusetts, who are not. The Washington lawsuit is a suit against the FDA. They are suing the federal government. They are adversarial to the federal government. We believe it's important to have some states, including California, that continue to collaborate, partner, and work with the federal government. We are doing that. We are working with the FDA. We are working with the White House. We are identifying pathways to execute and implement their commitment and ours, our shared commitment to reproductive freedom. So the states involved in the Washington lawsuit are not able to do that. Having said that, we are in a landscape that is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. We will always do what is best for the state of California. Today, the people in Washington, the people of California have the exact same rights. Full access to mifepristone. If that changes and we think being part of the Washington lawsuit will benefit and support the people of California, we will certainly consider that and pursue that route. It's also possible that we pursue a separate lawsuit in a separate court. Just conceptually an idea, to the governor's point, there's no shortage of creative ideas, of innovation, all within the existing contours of the law, which we honor, which we will follow. But there's always a way. And creative solutions, innovative approaches, working together, covering all of our bases is the way to do that. So it was intentional, it was deliberate, it was purposeful.
Attorney General, California, of course, wants to be a leader in protecting abortion rights across the nation, but to what degree is it legally feasible for you to control what happens in other states, for you to rebuff other states' laws that you may find offensive to California values?
Very. I mean, we've done it. We're doing it. We care about the people of California. We care about the people of the United States of America. And certainly, courts will make decisions, and legislative bodies and governors will make laws. When we have an opportunity to get involved in a state where they're looking at full bans or rollbacks or other attacks on reproductive freedom, we get involved. We make our best arguments. We file briefs. We team up with other other states and their attorneys general, and we put our best arguments forward. What the court does next is up to the court, and so we believe we've impacted the landscape nationwide, but unfortunately still there are some judges and some states, some governors, who are adamant and have no limits in their willingness to undermine and attack freedom and rights of women and girls. So, we also look at the law and see how we can do our best to protect Californians. Thus, the robust legislative package that we had last year. Including the governor's executive orders against extradition, against civil liability coming from out of state, against criminal liability coming from out of state, against subpoenaing, protecting against the subpoenaing of information for abortions that were safely and legally provided and received here in California. That's all legal. So to the point of creative pathways, approaches that are lawful and protective and consistent with our values. We go to wherever the fight is. Sometimes the fight's here in California, where we need protection, defense, and expansion. Sometimes the fight is in other circuits in other states, in other parts of the country. Wherever the fight is, you'll see us.
Governor, what shook out with Walgreens and the contract that, or I guess you said you no longer wanted to do business with Walgreens, but state has to continue that Medicaid contract. I mean, your communications office has said that tweets are not policy, but I think constituents, voters, viewers, and even journalists interpret that as such sometimes when you make such claims. I don't know if there's been any reflection on any of that.
Forgive me, I didn't fully understand the question. You referenced Walgreens and the actions we took. We're not renewing that contract.
The Medicaid contract.
We're not renewing the contract that we announced that we are not renewing. We're reviewing.
That'll be it.
We're reviewing other contracts.
Governor, did you say that you are working with Danco to start stockpiling Miffy? And
they have what I'm told and directly from them is they have a substantial supply. Question of adequacy will be determined on the basis of what happens over the course of the next days, months, weeks. We'll determine that, and we have conditional opportunities to reinforce that supply if necessary in a short run.
Do you have any other details on that, like how much that supply might look like, if we have access to it, and what happens if it's not approved come tomorrow?
Yeah, no, look, if you can't ship, first of all, as you know, this drug primarily comes from overseas. It's not, quote unquote, manufactured here. I imagine there's a scenario under Comstock, I mean, this is just hypothetical, where you'd have to set up manufacturing facilities within the states where it's legal, blue states, not red states. So that's a burden, it's an opportunity. There's a lot of creative thoughts that are going on in that space that we have processed, I assure you. Have been not surprising. We're doing $30 insulin because the folks behind me. We have a lot of creative ideas to do a lot of other drugs. We've announced our intention as it relates to naloxone and partnership with a lot of these companies. And we've certainly expressed that desire, if worst case becomes worst case, that we'd set up shop here.
Last question.
Governor, PG&E on its most recent earnings call said that it was going to go back to paying a dividend later this year. Meantime, the 70,000 wildfire victims are still waiting on their payments. They're being told not to expect to be paid in full. I'm curious to know whether you think that's fair and why, but more importantly, after your administration said that the state should ensure fire victims are treated fairly and fully compensated, is there anything, what do you plan to do to try to get those victims to 100% of what they're owed?
Well, we're here talking about the pending looming fire that's in front of us, and I appreciate the question on PG&E. That's well-established territory in terms of the comments we've made and the work we did collectively, not only as administration in partnership with the legislature. I don't know about the dividends call at PG&E, and I'll have to get back to you on that.
Why is it fair that they pay their shareholders but not their victims?
I'm sorry.
Are you monitoring the situation with Senator Feinstein's health, and are you prepared to name a replacement should she ultimately make the decision?
I wish her only the best. As you know, she's a friend, a mentor, and we've a relationship that goes back quite literally decades. And so I am wishing her all the best, and I look forward to getting back to work. And I was encouraged by some of the comments that Senate Majority Leader Schumer made in terms of his personal contact with the senator, that she's looking forward to getting back to work sooner than later. Thank you.